This week I got to talk with Clèmence Michallon and Gare about her newest thriller, Our Last Resort. So good. I burned through this book. I just loved it. I loved everything that she put into it, but this is what it's about. Innocence doesn't bail you out, it just makes you easier to trap. Frida and Gabriel arrive seeking a fresh start at the stunning Ara Hotel in the secluded desert of Escalante, Utah. Once so close they were able to finish each other's sentences, they've grown apart in recent years after a sudden unspeakable tragedy. Now, at the luxe resort, they are ready to reconnect between dips in the pool and hikes on spectacular desert trails. It all feels like paradise until the dead body of a beautiful young woman who is vacationing at the Ara with their powerful, much older husband is discovered. When the local police arrive and suspicion quickly falls on Gabriel, Frida is forced to revisit memories from their upbringing in a cloistered cult in upstate New York, their dramatic escape, and the scandal that followed. Frida's belief in Gabriel's innocence never wavered at the time, but now even she can't ignore the evidence mounting against him. Alternating between past and present timelines, Our Last Resort builds towards a shattering climax that uncovers the fate of the murdered Ara guest and poses the question, how well do we ever really know those we love? I really loved how she handled the two timelines and how we learned about what was happening with the cult, as well as finding out what happened at the resort and really getting to know Gabriel and Frida as characters. That's been my thing lately. I love some character development in my thrillers. I mean, anywhere, but especially in thrillers. And I just cared so much about both of them and loved how the ending came together. So, that being said, let's hear from Clèmence. So I'm super excited. I'm with Clèmence Michallon and Gare, and we are talking about Our Last Resort, which Gare and I unintentionally buddy read, which is always so fun. So I can't wait to talk about it with you guys.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm excited to be here amongst friends. Gare, sorry, I spoke over you.
That's okay. I spoke over you. I'm just so excited to be here. I can't shut up.
Oh man, that might be happening the rest of the show. We have established before we started recording that all of us are a little sleepy, so you guys are just gonna get some fun versions of us today.
Yeah.
This is the sleepy edition.
Yeah,
we are tired.
Book sleepy, not book wild.
This is your ASMR episode to like listen to before you go to bed.
Yeah.
Except we're gonna be talking about scary shit. So.
That's true. That's true. Well, since it is your first time on the show, I always want to ask a little bit about you first before we dive into the book. So what was your I want to be an author moment, or what was your like you had an idea to write something moment either?
When I was 7 years old, I went to school as usual, and my teacher that day, this is in France where I grew up, my teacher that day had us do what turned out to be my first creative writing exercise. And until that point, I was a kid who loved to read and who had read early, and I had my nose in a book, but it had never occurred to me because I was a little child to wonder where books came from. I had never realized that if books existed, it meant people wrote them. But my teacher put up a poster on the blackboard, and it was an illustration from a children's book. And if I remember correctly, it was a tree, and there was a squirrel in the tree, and a bird flying sort of at squirrel height. And we had to imagine what they were saying to each other. And I did it, and it was the most fun I had ever had. And I was like, this is amazing. I didn't realize you could just do this, but it like lit up something in my brain. And I came home and I announced I wanted to be a writer, like an author of books. I was promptly informed, because I grew up in France, a very pragmatic country, I guess, sometimes. It's promptly informed that writing books is not a reliable profession or a reliable way to earn a living. And so instead, I became a journalist for a number of years. The funny part being that journalism is not exactly a super reliable way to earn a living either. But in every area of life, the things that interest me only ever lead to unreliable ways of making a living. So I've just started to accept it. And I'm fine. I'm 33 and everything's okay. So that was my I want to be an author moment. Obviously, I spent many years just trying and failing to write, starting things, not finishing them. writing poetry. You know, I had every phase until I sort of started getting my act together a little bit more in my adult life.
Yeah, that is like such a cool answer. I love that a squirrel and a bird were like a part of the very, very beginning too. But the other fascinating part is I can't believe that English is your second
Yes.
language. Especially with both of these books, it's like your prose is so beautiful. So were you always writing in English, or how did you end up there basically? I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for
Uh-huh.
your very kind words. I didn't always write in English, but I did pretty early on have the idea that I might one day want to write in English. What happened was I watched a lot of YouTube in my early adulthood, and that's how I found John Green. And I am still to this day a John Green girl. And like he writes it, I'll read it. That's the rule,
Yeah.
you know? And it was around the time that he was launching The Fault in Our Stars. And the launch for The Fault in Our Stars was really this, as far as I remember it, it was kind of a launch on steroids, right? And he went on this book tour and it seemed really fun. And that was my point of entry into beginning to learn about US publishing, about agents and editors and publishing houses and book tours and how promotion works here. And I thought it all sounded really cool and dynamic and fun and like something I would want to be a part of. But also a lot of my favorite books as a reader were in English. I loved reading in English. I read books and magazines. My family and I, we traveled to the US quite a bit when I was growing up. So you know, I would pick up whatever magazines I could find in supermarkets and stuff and read that. And so, you know, it all amalgamated, right? My reader's life and then also the John Green of it all. And just, you know, authors were like who explained just how it worked online. I read blogs, I read books and stuff. And I thought it sounded really, really cool. But before I was able to publish a book in English, I actually have a secret French book. Which was it's not a thriller, it is a literary novel about a female bodybuilder who has to manage her sister's bakery for a few weeks and it ruins her life.
Oh wow.
It came out in September of 2020 with an independent feminist press based out of Paris. And it was exactly what it needed to be. Like it was an independent publishing kind of book and stuff. And so I did have this experience of putting out some fiction, you know, before I wrote The Quiet Tenant. And then like that became my US debut and also my thriller debut.
Yeah.
Oh my god! I thought you were gonna say like
John Green.
The bird said to the squirrel, "That man has a woman trapped in his shed."
That would be hilarious.
Yeah, the story of the Quiet Tenant just slowly building from the age of 7 until
cute little forest animals.
Yes, like the little animals are like going to save her.
I like that. I like that a lot.
How did your writing process develop for novels? Like, how do you approach them?
So I think this comes from being a journalist by trade, but I live and die by word count. And it's just the only way I know how to do it. And it's because in journalism, whenever you're assigned an article, you're also assigned a certain number of words to go with it. And it can be anything from 200 to 3,000 or more words, you know. And so you just develop a sense for however many words are, like the length of a certain number of words. And so when I started writing my first novel length work, which was in English, it was before the French book, but it had the length of a novel, but it didn't really have the narrative structure of a novel because I didn't really understand yet how to write an actual narrative. But what happened was I went to grad school in the US for a year between 2014 and 2015. I graduated in May of 2015. I had a job lined up for August of 2015. I could not leave the US because I was in the process of renewing my visa. And if you leave while you're in the process of renewing a visa, they consider that you dropped your application. So you really should not do that. I didn't need to job hunt because I had a job lined up. And also, I was not allowed to work any other job than the job I had lined up. So I thought to myself, I am stuck in one place. I have 3 months. I have nothing to do. If I don't write a novel now, it's not because I can't, it's because I won't.
Ooh, yeah.
And so I just I had to be very honest with myself, and I started writing 1,000 words a day. And it was really, the whole challenge was to just get the 1,000 words done. It didn't have to be pretty, but it could mean just taking like an hour away from hanging out with my friends in my corner and go on my phone or something and just getting the words done and then returning to the hangout or something. And that's just how I started doing it. And it's still how I work to this day. After this, I have to go write 500 words.
Wow.
We're keeping her from her writing. No, I'm just kidding.
It's kind of like full circle too, because I'm somebody who has like left plans early or canceled plans to read your books. So it's kind of like when you're sneaking away from your friends to like write, you find people that are sneaking away from their friends to read.
Oh, I am honored. That means a lot, actually. Thank you.
Yeah. What made you decide to go from a story about a bodybuilder who is working in a bakery to like literary thrillers that are like very dark and disturbing with this like beautiful, amazing prose that you've crafted of yourself?
Thank you very much. Well, so I wrote the bodybuilder story. Interestingly, there is like a slight serial killer reference in that book. It's not like it's not a proper plot line, but it is just like a pivotal line. Basically, there's a string of murders in her neighborhood, and she starts taking self-defense classes as a result, and that's how she meets the man who then becomes her coach. But that's just a little, but it was interesting to me in retrospect to be like, even in my little non-crime literary novel, like there was this sort of hint of crime there. It's almost like I had something in the back of my head that was trying to, push its way through to the front. What happened was really, I had an idea for a story, and it was an idea about a serial killer who had a captive victim and who has to move to a different place. And so what does he do with his captive victim? And that became The Quiet Tenant. But when I had that idea, I thought, I guess I'm writing a crime novel now. And it felt right. It felt like landing in the place that I was supposed to be. It felt like scratching an itch. It felt like telling the kind of story I was interested in telling. And I felt like I was home, and my weird, creepy, crimey home, finally.
That's so cool that there was even like a little bit of a reference, even like early on.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we have our little obsessions in the back of our brains. And I should also say, as a reader, my most favorite books were literary crime novels, right? Like I loved Megan Abbott, Jessica Knoll, just all those books that had taught me. Even Mary Higgins Clark, man, like she can write. And so all of those references also percolated into me started to write crime.
Yeah.
That's so interesting that you say that.
That's why she's a favorite of ours.
Yeah, that is so interesting that you say that, because when I was reading The Quiet Tenant, this was before Bright Young Women had come out. And when I was reading it, I was like, I feel like this is what would happen if Jessica Knoll wrote a serial killer thriller, because like my three like best prose and thrillers for me are you, Jessica Knoll, and Ashley Winstead are like my favorite like prose in this genre. So I'm very happy to hear that was someone that you also enjoy to read.
Well, thank you. I'm very honored to be in their company. I also love Jessica Knoll's books. I love Ashley Winstead's books. I mean, they're both just powerhouses.
Yeah.
Well, with this one, what was your inspiration? There are kind of like a couple of things going on. We've got the really luxurious hotel setting, and then also kind of these flashbacks to time in a cult. So what got you going in that direction?
So our last resort for me started with the location, which is pretty rare for me in terms of coming up with ideas and stories I might want to tell. I rarely start with place. Um, but what happened was this. I finished working on The Quiet Tenant, and The Quiet Tenant is a book, as you both know, that is set in the winter in the Hudson Valley. So it's very cold in that book. The sun sets at 5 p.m. It is often dark. And because it's a captivity story, there are few settings and they're all very simple, very bare. There's a restaurant, a house, and a garden shed. And that's about it, really. So after working on that book, I thought to myself, I want to go somewhere warm and beautiful.
Yeah.
And I would like to go to a location that people go to willingly and on purpose. um, and so my mind traveled back to this gorgeous hotel that I went to with my parents 15 years ago. And it was a beautiful hotel in the desert in Utah. And it remains to this day one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. But it's also super isolated and secluded. There is one access road that leads to it. We missed it a bunch of times. We like drove past it multiple times. We almost never found this place. We were going to go to the nearest motel because we were like losing daylight, and then we were in the desert. Like there's only so much you can do. And then we get there and it's like this oasis. It's incredible. But it's also a little spooky because you're surrounded by this climate that is completely hostile to human life. There's coyotes around, sorry, plural, more than one coyote. And you just can't make a quick escape. They have your car because you valet it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're very much like surrendering the control of your immediate vicinity to another place and your needs and stuff. And so I thought, wow, that would be a really interesting place to set a murder story. And that was the point of entry for me. Obviously, then I had to come up with actual characters and a story.
Yeah. That was the next
Yeah.
part. That's such a good point, though. I've never gone somewhere like that. So I hadn't also thought of how much you're like, oh, I don't have tons of agency right now.
Yeah, I'm very sensitive to that. I actually, I enjoyed that hotel very, very, very much. But in less fabulous settings, I really don't take quite so well to not being able to leave if I need to feeling stuck. It's a big reason why I finally learned how to drive, because I lived for a few months in a small hamlet in the Hudson Valley. And if you didn't drive, you couldn't do anything. So that was how I ended up ripping off the Band-Aid.
If you're an author, chances are high that you just want to spend your time writing and maybe reading, not thinking about social media, what to create, and what to post. And the good news is I have a solution for you. With just 3 hours of in-person filming, you can receive 90 days or 3 months worth of social media content. The content is a mixture of videos, photos, edited reels, and when you receive the content, you also receive a PDF that's a content calendar that links to all of the content, tells you exactly when to post it, and gives you an option for captions. And if you've ever felt like you're tired of just talking about your book all the time, we will help you come up with ideas that are general content for your page that's not just all about your books. If you are tired of thinking about your social media presence and just want to get back to writing, check out the link in the description.
It is like such an interesting setting too, because you have this like locked room, plot device, but it's one that you don't read about often, right? Like people are either on an island or they're like stuck in this old Gothic mansion in a snowstorm, so like that was very refreshing to like have that setting.
That was actually, thank you for pointing that out, because that was actually something that intrigued me about having this sort of locked room atmosphere, but in a place where it's really bright and sunny. It's almost like the Midsommar effect,
Yes.
like a scary story in broad daylight.
Yes.
It's
terrifying.
Yeah. Like it was very interesting. It felt like reversing something, an aesthetic, or it was really interesting to explore. And then it was also interesting because there's not that much to do in a luxury resort. So it's like, what would my characters have been doing if this murder didn't happen at the hotel? They would have been going to the pool, and that's about it,
Having a happy hour.
Yeah, gone to happy hour.
Yeah.
Done a spa treatment, maybe, but that's it.
It's also like unsettling too when you think of a place like this, that like people who do not worry about feeling trapped are like, there's this sunny oasis, I'm gonna get my spa treatment, I'm gonna relax, I'm gonna read a book, and like they're really, really looking forward to that experience, like the relaxing moment, and like finding like a little bit of like happiness and like whatever's going on in their lives, and then being like, okay, well now someone got murdered, or being the person that did get murdered, you know, like, oh, I'm finally gonna go get some like good pics for my Insta, and then like 2 days in you're just,
it's a disaster.
Yeah.
That's exactly, I feel like that's exactly what a story needs, right? It's everyone's expectations need to be subverted. I actually can't think, like, that sounds so good right now, going to that hotel and being a little like, I don't know, just chilling, going to happy hour. I actually did look into going back to that hotel, and I even asked my accountant, like, could I take this off my taxes if I did, you know, because it's for work. And I think the answer was yes. But even doing that, I couldn't justify it. It's gotten more expensive since I went there, and I could not justify the expense. There was no scenario where it was financially responsible for me to go back. So instead, I just relied on like just photos and Google Street View of the area, and in a way, I think that's sometimes that can be just as helpful, because at the end of the day, I wasn't trying to replicate the specific hotel I went to, and it was more about creating a little world for this story. But I wouldn't mind going back.
We'll still hard to get Clemence back fund.
Yeah, right.
If the universe is listening, I want to go.
If the margaritas are as good there as they were when we were in Montreal, then I would say it would be worth the trip.
Yes.
Because those were delicious.
Yes. Absolutely.
So the other interesting, I mean, there's a lot of interesting things. My dogs are just being weird right now. That's why I look distracted. But is like the brother-sister dynamic. And it's obviously like very complex and shaped by their past experiences. But what kind of drew you to writing that really like difficult sibling dynamic?
I knew that I wanted to write about two people who were very close, and I knew that one of them would get accused of the murder that happens in the hotel. And I knew that the other one would have to ask themselves, you know, is this person I love capable of murder? Because the question I keep going back to is, how well do you ever know the people you love? And it occurred to me pretty quickly that I wanted them to be siblings, but I'm comfortable revealing this. It's not a huge spoiler. Like, they're not actually related by blood. We find that out. And to me, that was a way of upping the emotional stakes, because I feel like you don't choose your family. You don't choose your blood relatives, right? But you do choose, well, your chosen family by definition, or your friends, or just the people you actually proactively invite into your life. And I thought, well, if it's someone that they chose, that they attached themselves to willingly, then that would make that whole question of, is this person that I like built my world around actually a murderer, that much more charged. And I also needed the emotional stakes to be as high as they could be, which is why I decided, or I learned, that they had grown up in a cult together, because I thought, well, if they had shared this really traumatic past, this really complicated childhood, and had survived it together, then it would be hard for them to imagine a world without the other in it. And it would, again, just heighten the stakes around that situation.
We did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you do any cult specific research for building it?
So I have been a little bit obsessed with cults since I was a kid. It was scroll drawings and cults. That was the whole schedule.
Yeah.
But I was a kid when I found out cults existed. I was watching TV and there was like this segment. It was a bit of a 60-minute style segment, but it was on French television. And I think I had to cults the same reaction I had to serial killers when I found out they were a thing, which was like, oh, it would have never occurred to me that this could be a thing, but also it makes perfect sense. Like, it makes perfect sense that it would come out of our world and of our society and of our attempts to exist together, to coexist, which is really hard. And so for a number of years, I just kind of like kept reading or following various cults from afar. And France, where I'm from, is a pretty culty country. Like I would be a kid and dodging the Scientology people outside of
Oh, wow.
like the bookstore because they were trying to like give you the stress test.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I know, we're like, oh, that's Scientology, hello. Or like there's a infamous French cult. There's a documentary on Netflix about it, and their leader says that he was visited by extraterrestrials who said that they want to come back to Earth one day, but they will only do so if they're welcome. So we have to build them a big welcome center. And so we have to give this guy all of our money to build the welcome center, basically. So all of which is to say, I had some background knowledge about various cults, thanks to my healthy hobbies. But then there was, I did sort of, when the time came to create the cult that was in the book, I decided I wanted the cult to feel real, but I didn't want it to feel like the fictional avatar of a specific cult, much like I did with the serial killer and the Quiet Tenant. So I borrowed some characteristics from various cults and high control groups. So there's a bit of Jonestown, there's a bit of David Koresh. There's also a bit of Nexium, which Gare, you're in upstate New York, you'll remember Nexium, I'm sure. It was that cult that was busted right before the pandemic. And that one I have a weird personal connection to because this is not going to go where you think it's going. But my husband worked for the office of the prosecutor who handled the federal prosecution of Keith Raniere, who was the leader of that cult. Wow. And so for weeks in my life, my husband was spending all his working hours, which is most of his waking hours during business, during the week time, with all the protagonists in the Nexium story, like in the same room, And so that case ended up taking up a lot of space in my household and in my psyche. And I also wrote about it as a journalist. And, later on, I watched the documentaries, I listened to the podcasts, I read the books, it was. And so that was kind of an interesting case study just to understand the mentality of a cult leader. What do they want? Why do they do it? And also just the power dynamics inside the cult.
Yeah, if anyone hasn't seen the Nexium documentary on HBO, if you're listening to this, you probably are a good match for that doc. It was crazy. Like, they also put it together so well.
And it's so insane too, because what I found wild is just how much footage they had access to. Because
it's like, of course, they're that audacious to keep that much around.
Yeah, because the people in Nexium just filmed themselves like all the time. And so, of course, it just became a lot of material for the inevitable Netflix documentary.
Wow.
Yeah.
I actually have no idea what it is.
Wait, really?
I swear.
Oh,
yes. Because cults freak me out so bad that like if I saw like a documentary about a cult or like anything in the news about it, I like have blinders on and I just like move on because
really
it like
did it scare you?
It freaks me out so bad with like brainwashing, basically. Like taking people who have had like a completely like normal life and like turning them into like a shell of themselves because of like what, like it freaks me out so bad, and like I usually like avoid it, and like if there was a movie about a cult, I'm not watching it. Like cult books I usually
Damn.
stay away from, and so like that's
Wow.
why. But like, and the funny thing is like with our last resort, I was like, okay, like you have to go in because like you love Clemence so much, but like you have to like face your fear and do this. And when I was reading it, like my heart was like beating out of my chest during like the cult scenes, but like I was also like, this is the most interesting cult I have ever read about or heard of in my entire life, because like I'm also very stubborn, right? So like somebody in Scientology or like any cult member would come up to me and be like, do this. And I'm like, you're out of your mind. Like nobody tells me, like nobody tells me what to do. I'm not doing that. I'm not following your rules. And like, even like a part of me, like if it, like a speed zone is like 30 miles per hour, I'm going to go 33 because like nobody tells me what to do. But like, I just like it freaks me out, but I also know that like I would not get involved in a cult because I'm so like stubborn. But like when I was reading Our Last Resort, I was like so stressed because I was like, oh my god, like these are just these two sweet little angel babies, and this like all makes sense to them,
Oh,
and
well,
then the humans that they grow into.
thank you first of all for giving it a chance, despite like the fact that it is such an area of like sensitivity for you. But also, I think like this is a very rational reaction to cults. Like
Yeah,
they are terrifying. They are
yeah.
extremely aggressive. Like cults in general are just extremely predatory organizations, and obviously at the risk of stating the obvious. But I mean, I think, but truly, I mean, they're super vindicated. Like it's just it, and like you said, like they just steal people's time. That's the thing. Even someone who leaves a cult, they just never get that time back that they
Mhm.
spent in it, and that's completely tragic.
Yeah. Well, like
It is.
I also think like this is a total compliment to you, but like you write such anti-stereotype characters that like when you think of the Quiet Tenant, right, like you think of like serial killers, and like probably like the stories that we heard growing up, they were like the creepy janitor in the school, the trucker who like was like terrifying from like the movie Joyride or something. You think of like all of these stereotypes, and then when you meet Aiden and you see him through the lens of somebody else, you're kind of like, this is the guy that like would be charming. Like if I were a woman in this book, I would be a goner because like I could see somebody falling for him. And then when I was reading the Quiet Tenant, Our Last Resort, I was like, okay, like this guy, I can also see his charm not being like do this, this, and this in like an abusive way, but like how he could charm them into just listening to him. And if they don't, obviously there's punishment, but like I could see the charm in him as well, that was like an anti-stereotype from what you would think of as like a cult leader,
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank
which
you.
scared
And
me even more than a regular
yeah,
cult.
but that's the thing. Like that's how they do it. Like the cult
Yeah.
leaders in the within the world of the cult, they always have a form of charisma,
Yeah.
which doesn't necessarily translate to the world at large, but definitely works within the confines of the cult, which is what I find fascinating. That was something I ended up sort of understanding um, about why, like about the mechanics of a cult. I realized why does someone start a cult? And it's like they're trying to create a world where they are the center of the universe, they're universally adored, they're
Mhm.
listened to, and they're the main character. And what I find interesting is, yeah, we all want that. We just don't make it other people's problem. Like something we have within us.
Yes.
And then one of the first steps of integrating into society is to tame that instinct.
You're like, it's basic,
Yeah.
guys.
You don't do that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because when you think of
That
like
covert narcissism.
right, and like when you think of
Mhm.
like cult leaders, like I just always would think of like Charles Manson, or like
Mhm.
the stereotype of like the guy that has like the long white robe and like Birkenstocks and like the beard and the long like straggly gray hair. So then when I was reading this, I was like, okay, great. Not only did she write like a cult leader that I'm like kind of like, okay, this makes sense. Now it's like even scarier for me. But like he's a physically attractive, like very physically attractive man. So then I was like, oh God, there's
Oh
two,
no, it's working.
two out of two of your books that I would be a goner in. And I'm like, oh no.
I'm very sorry. That's
was
my barometer when I write a
basically-
book. I'm like, would dare survive in this universe?
The third book I'm probably going to be out too, because I'll tell you
I will
what,
bear
like,
this in mind.
if Aiden would have, like, when I was reading The Quiet Tenant, like I thought of like the restaurant as like the restaurant in the show Ginny and Georgia. I don't know if you watched that, but
Oh, I haven't watched
it's like
it.
this very like quaint, like cute, like something you would see in like a Hallmark movie, you know, like.
Yeah.
And so I was like, if a man came up to me like in an alley, then I would be like, no, sir, like I am not going to be your
Yeah.
victim. But like if you come up to me in a location like that, I would be like, this is how my meet cute starts. You know. And so, but then I was like, when I was reading Our Last Resort, I was like, this is the cult that would get me.
This would get you.
Yeah.
My husband, I don't know why I'm saying it like people don't know who he is, Tyler, and I watched Presumed Innocent last week. And it was the same thing though, because like I just kept texting Gare. I'm like, he's a horrible person. And I'd be like, why does he keep getting away with it? And then I was like, oh, because he's really hot.
Yeah.
So we're all like, oh, I want to forgive you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's why. It's scary. It's scary because even when I was watching Presumed Innocent, I was like, I would probably fall for this. I would fall for some of these like lies and things, you know, where you like make. But I mean, Jake Gyllenhaal could get me to join a cult.
I know. That's the other part. I was like, it is because he's so good at acting that like every now and then I'd be on his side and then I'd be like, no, you ruined so many lives.
Yeah.
But that is beside the point.
That is the beauty of Jake Gyllenhaal. No, of storytelling. I know.
I kept having All Too Well come into my head, and I was just like, no, get out.
That is the beauty of storytelling, though. It messes with your brain. Like, and it just, you know, and what I always go back to is I do enjoy writing characters who sort of step out of the mold a little bit. It actually came out of like an edit note I got super early on when for my first short story. I have published half of the short stories I've ever written, so I have published one. And it's in French, and it's not a crime story. And it was years ago, but I remember that there's a veterinarian in that story. And I had described him at first as like white blouse, white smile, you know, like short hair, whatever. And I remember my editor being like, this is a very standard issue veterinarian. Like, it would be more interesting if the veterinarian wasn't out of central casting, you know. And so then I remember I gave him like long hair and a bun. and just like in a manner that was a little bit more distinctive, basically. And it worked, and I never forgot that. Like, it gave more texture to the story if people aren't exactly who you expect them to be.
I love that.
We're just fans over here.
I know the way that your mind works is like
I know,
fascinating to me.
This works for me.
Fascinating. We will help you. Like, we'll be your cheerleaders that will help you with like any word goal.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Seriously though, I all that like positive feedback, the people who connect with the books, with the writing and stuff, it really does power me, and I suspect it works for other writers as well through the difficult drafts. It always has, right? Like, it's just the idea that, listen, like, now this draft is a draft and it reads like a draft and it's not good yet, but these other things I've written that people have connected with, which feels like a miracle every single time, they also were once weird drafts, you know, like, it just gives you faith. It's very, very important. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. So there are two timelines going on. Hopefully you guys can't hear my dog panting behind me. He chewed his bones.
I just thought it was Tyler.
He's hot. Right? Yep. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. Who knows? But did you go into it knowing the like past, and then did you write it linearly or as it appears in the book?
So yeah, there are two timelines in Our Last Resort, and for people who haven't read the book yet, one of them spans days and follows the murder investigation at the hotel and its consequences on our characters, and then the other timeline spans years and years and follows our characters past in the cult and the fallout from that. And I went into writing this book with an incredible amount of naivete, which I think is needed anytime you start something. But I was like, well, I did multiple points of view for the Quiet Tenant, so that's done. I will now do dual timelines.
Yeah.
And we talked about Jessica Knoll earlier, but Luckiest Girl Alive is really one of the crime novels that really got me into this genre, and it's told in dual timelines. And so I thought, here's a great point of reference. And it turns out it's incredibly hard to write dual timelines, because you have to write the adults who would grow out of these children. You have to write the children who would become these adults. You have to have a firm grasp on time, which almost no writer has ever. That's why we have copy editors who are like, you just said it was February and they're going to the beach. Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Going to the beach in the Northeast in February, not a good idea.
That would be Kate and I. That would be Kate and I. Honestly,
yeah.
we're not a
Like,
fan.
yeah,
We're not fans of the heat. So like when
all the bugs are dead.
all the bugs are dead. We're not gonna sweat. So like that's our time to shine.
Yeah. You might lose a toe to frostbite.
Yeah, that's okay.
Worth it. But so I thought, okay, I'm going to do dual timelines, and it will be, it'll be something I do. It's really hard, as it turns out, to put them together, and also to make sure that, like, from a plot standpoint, that the past informs the present gives more meaning and more weight to the past, and you can kind of like do little reveals and plot twists and use the timelines for misdirection and all that good stuff. To answer your question, Kate, I wrote the book in the order that it's read. So
Wow.
I was toggling between timelines in the course of writing it. So I would write a past chapter, I would write a present chapter, and just go back and forth, because it helps me keep track of what I've disclosed to the reader. But it also gives me a feel for just the pacing of it, and just what would be interesting to find out now. Where do we need to go? Like, this scene was a lot of this. What does the next one need? I get bored very easily, so I use myself as a barometer for that stuff, so it helps me keep track of that. In revision, I don't always revise in sequence, because sometimes I'll do a pass, and it's all about, like, make sure Gabriel's love of the Roman Empire, for example, is consistently depicted, so like I can do this like in whatever. I mean, I do usually do that in sequence, but it's not like super linear. But in terms of putting the big pieces together, I do usually write in sequence.
Wow.
That's impressive.
Yeah, I'm like more fascinated. Like as like the minutes go on, I'm like, wow. It was there one timeline that you thought was like easier to write than the other?
That is a very good question. I think I did find the past timeline a little easier to write, because the present timeline is really the one for which I would have needed to have like my murder board, like my string board, because there's a lot going on in this present timeline, with a murder investigation, with what is really going on behind the scenes, with what we find out later on. Then we kind of like, there was just a lot of moving parts to keep track of. And I gave myself like literal headaches trying to keep part of all these things. And the past timeline felt a bit more like, I'm gonna build this cult, and I'm gonna and then I did have to sort of smooth the edges around big plot points. But it was a bit, for some strange reason, I guess the atmosphere of it also powered me through. It was slightly easier. Both of them, though, gave me headaches.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was like. That's what I was like thinking when I was like reading it, because like you said, one timeline spans years and the other one spans over like a couple of days. So I was like, I wonder if it was harder to like I was with you where I was like, if I were writing this book, it would be easier for me to write a timeline that spans over years, because you have such a tight frame in the present timeline where you're like, okay, well, how can I like kind of like stretch this out in between like the big things that are happening in the present? But then I was like, but also when you're spanning years, you have to have something happen on one chapter that like could result in changing them as a person as time goes on, and make it believable the next time you see them in like the culty past chapters. So I
Mhm.
was like, I would assume that both of them would be very hard to write, but
Yeah, both of them were hard. But yes, there was something about, so another aspect of it that actually ended up, this is going to sound silly, but it's a real factor. One of the timelines, like you just said, Gare, spans mere days.
yeah.
So that means from a pacing point of view, we are with them like one chapter is the morning, one chapter is late morning, one chapter is early afternoon, etc., etc. Something new always needs to happen. On the other hand, it is just one day. Like it has to be realistic, you know?
Right, right.
But also, because we are with them almost hour by hour, these people have to eat, sleep, and wash themselves at least a little. You know what I mean? And it's like it feels like keeping a Tamagotchi alive at some point. I never know. It is not easy to me to figure out where to fit meal times, showers, and sleep in the middle of a crime story. You know, because it always going to sound a little silly. Like he's accused of murder. He's supposed to go have a sandwich.
Well,
You know?
yeah. And well, and that's the thing too, is like making it believable. Like
Yeah.
if you're being accused of murdering someone, like you're not having a 4-course meal like you would if this was a normal vacation. You know what I mean? Like you're like forcing down half a sandwich because you're like, is my life about to get thrown away?
Yeah, but you also but you still need to eat. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
at some point these people are gonna need to like have a protein bar or something.
Yeah.
Like it's just another layer of things to deal with. You know?
Yeah. That's very interesting too, because I never thought of that when I was like reading, like if they've bathed enough or what they ate. I would have needed a nap. I know that. Like I've been like, this is the worst vacation I've ever had in my life.
I need to like
yeah. Time out for me.
Well, I have a really random question that I don't want to forget, but with Gabriel, with his name, so anytime there's like culty related stuff, I'm also like more aware of like biblical names. Was there any reason that he was called Gabriel?
Yes, it is partly biblical. But there are actually a fair few biblical references in the book, or like so the way the present timeline is presented, it's the 4th day, the 5th day, the 6th day, and then things reach their apex on the 7th day. So that's pretty biblical. There's a the first past chapter starts with in the beginning. I can't speak English today. I can't. Guys, I can't. It starts with in the beginning there was a meal, which is also biblical. I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple, but well, and also there's Gabriel's whole like Roman emperors, like which harkens back to Roman mythology also. So there's a lot of like religious references. Gabriel is called Gabriel for a handful of reasons. One of them is the Bible reference. The other reason is that I tend to use for characters names that I like, but for one reason or another will not be using for my potential child in the future.
I love that.
So it's a delightful way to stake a claim in a name I like.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason that has been taken off the table, if should I ever become a parent.
Yeah.
So Gabriel was one of those. I also think it's a really beautiful name.
I like the name Gabriel.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. I mean, it's still here.
I got like nervous for you.
I know.
I got very nervous.
We heard it. I have a question for you that I'm very curious about, because I think that if you wrote a book only in the cult setting, it would have been like bingeable, read it in one sitting. If you had a book that was just the murder investigation in the present time, same thing. But you add such a different layer to this when you have, it's not the first time that he's been like a person of interest in a death of a woman.
Yeah.
So what made you decide that that was going to be something you wanted to, because you already have like so much going on. Like what was like what popped off in your head that was like, you know what, I'm really gonna just like make this the ultimate read?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, a couple of reasons. One was, I think that if you want to write a novel and skip the boring parts, you really need quite a bit of story to make that happen.
You don't have boring parts.
Thank
Just
you.
let you know.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But like so years ago I interviewed the wonderful Taylor Jenkins Reid, and she calls it filling your sandbox. You just have to have like enough material, to sustain you for 80,000 to 90,000 words. But really the thing that kind of sealed it for me was realizing that The Quiet Tenant was two things in one. It's a captivity story and it's a serial killer story. And it's the fact that those two things are put together that created a story that I hoped would be kind of something a little new, a little different, a new take on the serial killer genre, or a new take on the captivity story, depending, on what angle you're looking at it from. And in this particular case, I thought, it came out of just thinking about the story at first. Sorry, my chair is like making weird noises in the background, but it's okay. It's a pleasure of sitting on fake leather. But it came out of following the story. I was like, there's going to be these two siblings. They're going to be in a hotel. There is going to be a death that is evidently a murder. One of them is going to be a suspect. The other needs to wonder if they're capable of it. It needs to mean a lot. Ooh, they grew up in a cult together. And I guess I could have just had a couple of flashbacks, but it didn't feel like it was enough. I decided that then this would be a cult story and then a murder in a hotel story. It needed to be both, because that way you could just take the interesting elements of both and put them together. And I think also, to me, the test is, does each part give more meaning to the other? And to me, the answer here was yes. Their past in the cult is something they have to overcome, and in a way, their present life is always weighed against their, what happened in their past, and that was interesting to me.
Yeah. Those flashbacks with Annie were some of my favorite parts.
Thank you. So Annie is Gabriel's wife, for people who haven't read the book yet. Those I had to work quite a bit on. They came out in edits. It's amazing for me how much of the book reaches its final form in revisions. I always do a ton of work in revisions, and this kind of came out of conversations with my editor, where she pointed out, and it's so true, and I always go back to it, even in a crime story, you need various flavors. It can't just be relentless. You need to show the happier times as well.
Right.
And it was actually, and it was actually really lovely to write those chapters where Gabriel and Annie fall in love and start making a life together, and just have like this minute of innocence basically in their lives. And I wrote them. I was in Spring Lake, New Jersey at the time, actually having quite a difficult summer. I mean, Spring Lake, New Jersey was great, but it was just a complicated time. And I decided that I would use my surroundings for those scenes of their joy and happiness. And I really loved writing those scenes, actually. They're some of my favorites in the book.
Yeah, they were some of mine when I was reading it, because it's like, your characters are like going through the ringer, either like being, involved in a cult and seeing that trauma, or being part of a murder investigation. So like seeing them as like their normal selves without, some of that stuff going on was really like interesting to see too, because I feel like it kind of like built on their characters more.
Well, thank you. And it was interesting for me to write because it was an opportunity to kind of just, let's take Frida and Gabriel, whom we have only seen in trying circumstances or in this weird isolated cult, and just let's put them in the real world for a second.
Yeah.
How do they feel going to the beach? You
Mhm.
know, what is it like for them to be in a supermarket? What
To
is
be
it like
happy.
for them to be happy? You know? Imagine that.
Yeah.
And what are these people like when they're happy and they can catch their breath for a minute? And what I find interesting, I'm realizing this just now while I'm telling it to you, but in those chapters, they get the experience they're supposed to have at the hotel in the present, right? Like they go to a sunny location to have a vacation.
Yeah.
And that like in Spring Lake, New Jersey,
memories.
you know, like they get to have that experience.
Yeah.
Part of it was also inspired by my first experience eating s'mores and my father's first experience eating s'mores.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a big chapter about s'mores in Our Last Resort. And I was an adult, obviously, the first time I had s'mores. We don't really do them in France, so I had to like be taught how to make a s'more and stuff. And I loved it. And my dad,
So
who
good.
does not describe himself as someone who has a sweet tooth, but who has a sweet tooth that has its own center of gravity.
That's me. I can relate to your father with that.
Yeah. Me too. I have a huge sweet tooth, and it's so funny. He's like, "No, I'm more of a meat and cheese kind of guy," and then he's always the first to order dessert. It's like, no, you have a sweet tooth. It's okay.
Yes.
And he had s'mores, and I remember his like eyes widened, and he had 3 more after.
Yeah.
I don't blame him.
They're so
Oh,
good.
Now I want
great.
some.
Yeah.
I love s'mores. I know. Now I'm sad I don't have a fire pit.
I know. Me
I guess.
too.
Can you make them over like the gas stove?
I think you can.
I think
Yeah.
you can.
I think people do.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not, yeah, right. I could try it.
Yeah.
Hopefully, no cooking accidents happen later this evening.
Yes. Yes.
Oh my god, I know. You're gonna be like
What did we do?
Set fire to home. Charge marshmallows.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I guess at the end, I do always ask if you've read anything recently. Or do you have another question?
I do. I have 2. I'll be really
Oh,
quick.
go
I
for
promise.
it. I'm
Go
not
for
going
it.
anywhere. You're not ready.
No, go for it.
I'm not going to spoil what it is, but there is an Easter egg in Our Last Resort for The Quiet Tenant. And I am an Easter egg junkie. Like, I just feel like especially when an author does an Easter egg in their books to like kind of show that they're in like the same world, it's very like personal as a reader to have that Easter egg, because it's kind of like, it just feels like it's like connecting you more with the author.
Invisible string.
Yeah. So like, what popped in your mind to be like, I'm gonna make these like kind of in the same world and have this like Easter egg for everyone who loved The Quiet Tenant?
Well, first of all, thank you for noticing and for appreciating it.
I was inconsolable for 20 minutes. Like,
I know it was really hard for me. I was like, oh god, wait, I'm very sorry.
it was so effective. I like loved it. I love when things like make me like that. You know what I mean? Like, if you depress me, then like star power.
Thank you. I think for me, I don't really know where it came from. I think it was just I couldn't resist it. It was realizing that my French book and The Quiet Tenant and now Our Last Resort all takes place a few years apart from one another in the Northeast. And I always like to think about in the North and in Utah, obviously, but like they all have ties to the Northeast of the United States. They do, right? Yes. And so I just was thinking, it means that the characters in Our Last Resort exist in the same universe as the characters in The Quiet Tenant and in the same region. And so I like this idea of just having this extended, cinematic universe, basically, where they kind of correspond with each other. I also liked the idea of sort of the previous book passing the torch to the next one.
Oh,
and
I
having
love
a little,
that. That makes me even more emotional.
But it is true. Like, you always leave the previous book to write the next one. but they feel connected to me. Usually
Yeah.
I'm promoting one while I'm writing the next. Like they literally overlap for me. And so it just felt meaningful in that way to just have a little bit to infuse Our Last Resort with a little bit of the Quiet Tenant.
Yeah. And
So
like,
I intend to keep that going.
oh, good. Oh, I can't
Yeah.
wait. Because for me, like, I love like bleak and like sad aspects and stories like that. And like for me, when I was reading it, I just thought like Frida and Gabriel are like thinking about everything good outside in the outside world, outside of this cult, and like leaving, you know, all of the like toxic things behind. And then like there was just like something in there that like proved that like the outside world that they're like dreaming of almost is like just as scary, you know.
Yeah. I know it was a little cruel on my part.
It
Like
was
I could
so
have
it
found
was so
something else.
effective. It was so like I
Yeah.
like rocked my world. Like I was like Kate, did you get to this part yet? You have to like tell me as soon as you did. And like I can't tell you anything else, but like you have to like tell me as soon as possible. Like 8 text messages in a row. I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Well, you know what else? I love when authors do it. So
It's
I
one of my favorite things.
Seriously, I'm a big reader of Salinger. And so in his short stories, you know, you always find, because they're all about, well, they're pretty much all about this Glass family. And so you will find out in one story what happened to this character from the previous one. And I remember as a teenager just finding this very, very exciting.
Yeah. I think Jennifer Hillier does it a lot too.
Yeah, I was thinking of her in Catherine Ryan Howard.
Oh,
right?
God, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, she does. She's so good at it too.
And I think Stephen King does it.
I was gonna say, then there's Stephen King, who's got like dairy all over the
place. Right. Everything's in Maine.
Is it dairy? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, dairy Maine.
It sounded wrong after I said it. I knew it too easily.
Gare, do you have a second question?
Yeah, I do. Because I just think it's very interesting that you've already talked about like as you were like growing up, you were like fascinated by like serial killers and cults. And so now that you've explored those like tropes in thrillers, are there any tropes that like you are dying to try out? And are there any tropes that like you're like, I'm absolutely never gonna write that?
Oh, that is such a good question.
Those were my only 2 questions like going into this, and I was like, I have to remember these, and so like
they're good ones.
Thanks.
Well, I mean, I will say that, so without revealing too much, Our Last Resort is a book with a twist. And I was not intending when I started it to write a book with a twist. I had no intention to write a book with a twist for another 15 years because that sounded too difficult. I was like, I'm going to learn how to do something else. A trope that I would like to explore. What are some tropes?
Do you know what I would love? Like, I would be obsessed if you did Dark Academia.
Yeah.
I could just see you like absolutely killing that.
Thank you.
Yeah. I love.
Yeah, I would dip my toes. I would dip my toes.
I also love cold case missing people.
Yes.
Or like something that happened like 15, 20 years ago, and they're like, we have the man that committed this crime or the woman that committed this crime, and then like 20 years later being like, we think we like screwed up. And maybe we don't have the right person, or there's this like shred of evidence that like maybe we can solve this decades later. I just think those are like so much fun.
Those are all very interesting. I will take all of these ideas. Thank you very much.
No problem.
I will, and I don't think there's anything right out where I'm like, I would never do it. Actually, I think some really interesting ideas can come out of thinking like, oh, there's this trope I'm not a huge fan of. And it's like, well, how would I do it?
Oh, that's a good
point.
point.
Well, I kind of got the idea because when we were in Montreal, when you were on the panel with Samantha Bailey, and she was like, she's someone who like, I love her stories. I think she's such a phenomenal storyteller, but her stories always have this like darkness to them, you know, like there's always something that's like really dark that happens in them. And then when she was talking to you, she was like, I think I'm brave enough to finally read The Quiet Tenant because I usually veer away from serial killers. And I was just like fascinated with that conversation because I was like, you have so many dark things in your books, and like reading about a serial killer is what terrifies you. So then I just like always
Yeah.
like I always like wonder, you know, like one day I'm gonna like try to like nail it where I'm like, this author is like, I think this is going to be their next trope in thrillers. So I'm always like
I love
curious
that.
as
I
to
love
what.
that.
Yeah.
And that's true. By the way, how much fun was Montreal?
It was like, I'm still like thinking about it. Like, you know how you get like the blues when you come back from vacation and you're just
Yes.
like, oh, back to reality.
Yeah.
It's like 2 months later and I'm still there.
You're like, I want to go back.
We have like a group chat of like Sanika, Candace, and Aaron and I, who like I hung out with like 24/7 when I was there. And I was like, okay, like 10-month countdown to like we can like go back. It was so much fun. I loved it.
I want to go back too. It was so fun. Great people, great panels, great books, great food, great drinks. Everything was delicious.
It was so good. It was so good.
It was great. Everything. The panels were delicious. The food was delicious. Everything was great. Loved it.
Yeah. It's so funny too. I took so many selfies when I was there, and like the only one that came out good was ours.
Really?
Yeah. Like everybody else, I had like one eye shot, or like someone's like forehead was like blurry, and I was like, oh my god, like you literally spend half of your time posting pictures on the internet and you can't even take a selfie. And then I came across ours and it was like, I was like, oh thank god.
Perfect.
It was perfect. Yeah.
I'm very happy.
Yeah, I loved Montreal.
It was so nice to see you and hang out. It was so great. Those drinks at the end were really fun.
Yeah.
If anyone is listening to this and like wondering if they should come, absolutely you should come to Montreal Mystery Festival. It was really great. And the organizers were it was so well organized. Everyone was so kind, really well
so fun.
prepped.
And it wasn't like overwhelming.
No, it was awesome. I even had time to explore the city just a little bit. Did you have time to walk around a bit?
No, I didn't. I felt like it was like pretty jam-packed, but like the things that I wanted to do, because I'm very close to Montreal, so like the things that I wanted to do, I was able to do. Like I wanted to go to the bookstore, I wanted to go to Harry's Donuts, and like little things like that. So like I did get to do them, but like there wasn't a lot that I got to like pack in. Just because I mean the lineup was amazing. So there were like a lot of like people that I wanted to like see and, you know, like listen to their panels and stuff. So that was like a good thing because it means they like did a good job of like setting everything up and organizing it. But like I just didn't have like a whole ton of time in between. But
I get that. No, I get that.
But the food was great. The drinks were great.
Great. Yeah. I was very excited because my husband and I went to a big bookstore at one point and I saw all the books in French.
Was it Indigo?
I don't remember.
I went to the huge Indigo and I was like, oh, it was so nice.
It was so great. And I always feel like, so French editions of books are you know, some of them are the same in France and in Quebec, and it just felt so strangely like I was at home, you know.
Oh yeah.
And then I had a funny moment. So now this is a total tangent. Let me know if we need to wrap this up. But I had a funny moment. So obviously in Quebec I speak French, right? Whenever I go places. But some words are really different. And for example, I went to Starbucks and I got 2 drinks. And the wonderful woman behind the counter asked me if I wanted a cabaret. And I was like, sure. You know? Who doesn't want a cabaret? Like right now? 10 a.m. on a Sunday?
Like might as well.
And it turns out a cabaret is a tray. In Quebecois, but it's the French word for cabaret, and that means cabaret. Like it's like if literally I told you, do you want a cabaret for your drinks?
Yeah. Well, because I mean, listen, if they were serving cabaret in Starbucks in Montreal, I'd still be there. This is where I live now.
I was a little disappointed that it was not.
Yeah.
Starbucks cabaret.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
I need to go next year.
Yes, you do.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Please, yeah.
Yeah.
I know,
So
I
much
want to
fun.
go back.
Yeah.
Also, it was a big moment for me as a driver because it cemented my ability to drive on the highway.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah. It was pouring down rain when I went there. And I was like, ugh, but like the ride back was so like sunny and perfect weather. So
Yes, it was
yeah.
a beautiful.
Yeah, it was a really good day back. But yeah, that should I am going back next year and I will be moderating again. So that should tell everybody that they, if you were able to,
Need to go.
to Montreal.
Go to Montreal, everybody. Let's all
And if we're
And BoucherCon's going to be in Calgary
yeah,
next
yeah,
year. BoucherCon's in Calgary next year.
Oh,
I'm gonna try that too. Yeah,
let's all go.
yeah.
We're just going to go everywhere.
Yeah, I know, right? That would be so fun.
I mean, anywhere but here.
Yeah, true. I know. Every time I go to Canada, they're like, "Oh, you're from the States," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm from the States," and they're like, "Ugh." They're like, "What's that like?" And I'm like, "What do you think?"
I do like the idea of like the border agent being like, "So, what's it like?"
Yeah. Well, when I go into Canada, because like I live so close that like I get my groceries every weekend in Canada. So I go to Canada like every weekend, or like twice a week. And when I go, they're just like, "Oh, like what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm going grocery shopping." And they're like, "Okay, like have a good day. Like we love it." And then like when I'm coming back, like to get back into the US, they're like so like strict, and I'm just like, the Canadian customs agent like couldn't be like any like kinder and like welcoming me, and then like the US customs agents are like, "Why would you go to Canada instead of here?" You know, and I'm like,
Oh my gosh.
For groceries.
I'm like, yeah, I'm like, why do you think?
Yeah.
Like I can go to like a farmer's market or like these like nice like Farm Boys, like my jam. I love it there. It's like the best grocery store in the entire world. Or I can stay on the state side and end up with a bunch of people wearing red hats at Walmart trying to get my groceries, which is like not what I want to do. No, that's not how I'm gonna go out.
Yeah.
We know how he feels about cults.
Yes. That is not a call I'm joining. Thank you very much. Like if I go out, I hope it's by like being abducted by Jacob Elordi and like I've never seen again. That would be completely fine. I died happy.
It would be an interesting set of circumstances.
Could you imagine?
Oh,
That could be your book, right? Like celebrities always like worry about like their fans, but like what if the fan had to worry about the celebrity?
What if a fan had to worry about a celebrity?
Yeah.
That is actually, this is how novels get written.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to write it.
It all starts with a like.
Could you imagine? Like he was short and kind of rude.
Yeah.
Had a mini golden doodle.
That'd be amazing.
That is not how I would write it.
Yeah.
That is not what I would choose.
Yeah.
That's not how I would describe you.
Oh.
Were we about to talk about books we've read recently and loved?
Yes. Have you loved anything recently? Yes.
I was like, it's perfectly possible I made this up.
No.
I recently read and loved The Bombshell by Darrow Farr.
Okay.
It is a perfect novel. It is a debut.
Wow.
It is a literary, I cannot describe it any other than a literary crime novel. Like it has to be characterized as such. It is about a teenage girl in Corsica who one summer in the 1990s gets abducted and taken hostage by Corsican militants. And she ends up kind of joining their cause, but it's complicated. And it's kind of a take on the Patty Hearst story, but it's also entirely its own thing. As a person from France, it's one of the best portrayals I've read of, well, France and Corsica and just the summers over there and politics and the men and the vibes. And it is beautifully written. The prose is amazing. The story is great. It was one of those books I didn't want it to be over. And it was great. I adored it.
The cover is so cool.
I love the cover.
Yeah. That sounds really good.
I have to check that out.
It was great. I recommend.
I'm going to have to check that out.
I love that. I know. Now I'm going to need it.
Is that me?
I can't believe I hadn't seen it anywhere.
I know. That cover is so cool too. That like definitely would have noticed that.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
course
What
you're
about
gonna
you
agree.
guys? Have you read anything lately? Aha, I'm turning the questions around.
I just finished listening to Junie by Eric Crosby Eckstein. It is so good. I'm like currently on an audiobook hangover right now because of how good it was. The narrator was really fantastic too. But it's about an enslaved girl in 1860s Alabama, and her sister has just passed recently. My dogs are coughing right now. She is an enslaved girl who lives in Alabama in the 1860s, and her sister passed recently. And one night when she goes to her grave, something she does basically brings her sister back as a ghost. And so then there's kind of like, it is not a thriller and it's not a mystery. However, her sister is like, her unfinished business does kind of unfold like a mystery. It's more coming of age, but it was so good. I like really loved it, and the narrator was fantastic for it. So
Ugh,
that's my current recommendation.
now I have to pick up 2 books.
Just Adam.
I have like 50 pages left of When You Disappeared by John Mars. I
Ooh.
am like feverish over this. It's not like as like fast paced as his other books, but like it's so good. So it's basically like this man and this woman are married. They have 3 very young children, and he just like walks out one day and decides to like leave everything and like not tell her where he's going, what he's doing. He has no plan whatsoever. His wife wakes up and she's like, "Why is my husband missing?" Like she thinks that like he was like abducted or like killed on a run and everything. And you follow this timeline 25 years. So like he comes back to his house 25 years later to his wife and says, "This is what happened." So you're following like what she's going through as her life implodes, and like what he's doing, going all of these places, like living all of these different lives, and like they're like you're reading it at the same time. So like one chapter is like her 24 and a half years later, and then it's like 20 years later, and it's so addictive for both
Wow.
of their storylines. Like there's like a lot of, it's kind of like Unraveling Oliver meets like The Talented Mr. Ripley,
Oh
if
wow.
that makes sense. You know,
Wow.
like it's
Mm-hmm.
just, I can't put it down, and I'm just, that's half of why I'm tired today,
It's a
because
good
there's
read.
just like little like bombshells that he like drops that I'm
Wow.
like eating them up like I'm, what was that, what's that thing called, that game?
Pac-Man?
Yeah, I'm just, that's me with John Mars. I'm just going right along, falling for it all.
I love it.
So yeah,
Well, they both sound really good.
yeah,
So
Mm-hmm.
I'll read both.
yeah,
So now everyone has 4 books they need to read, basically.
yes, yes.
Well, yeah. Where can people follow you to stay up to date about everything?
Well, if the past few days are an indication, on the highway really closely.
Look for the Volkswagen.
Yes.
People just don't leave space anymore behind you on the highway. They just get in there anyway.
They do.
But people can follow me. Instagram is my home on the internet as a writer. So for better or worse, it's what works for me. So it's Clèmence Michallon, all one word, no accent on the E. That's my handle. And then I also have a newsletter, clemencemichallon.substack.com. And I also have an author website, which also has a portfolio of my journalism work, clemencemichallon.com. Yeah.
That's
It's
so cool.
selected works.
Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, I love that.
You're just everywhere.
Yeah,
I try.
as she should be.
Well, thank you for talking with us
Yeah.
about
Oh my God,
Our
thank
Last
you for
Resort
talking to
and
me.
everything else.
Yeah.
Thank you. This was so fun.
It was
This
so
was
fun.
really